Welcome to Modelling Fundamentals, Part 22. In this section we're going to have a look at our steel positioning, which is the last bit we're going to have a look at before we get into our detailing. But this is also a very critical milestone in our preparation for detailing, because everything that leads up to this point really comes and affects our 2D detail out the other end. So we've got to make sure that everything's spot on by this point. So what I'm going to do is, we've got a few PowerPoints to go through or a few slides, and we'll have a look at those and then we'll get into the actual procedure of it. So as we went through in our last episode, we've got our positioning and it's based on our classes. So our display class assists us with our single part positioning. Our area classes will basically distinguish our group level positioning, and our family classes we can use for putting a prefix on, and really I only use that for staged or phased jobs like multi-level buildings and stuff like that, where you've got to kind of break the job up into chunks or sections. Now, just like the last section, I just want to reiterate, this is my way of doing it. You don't have to do it this way. If your customer wants you to do it a different way, then please feel free. The reason I use this methodology is because it's got the least human contact, and we all know that the program isn't going to make the errors, the user is going to make the errors. So because I've always worked on my own, I try and remove all the errors out of it, which is removing the human contact. I just let the program do what it's good at. So the breakdown of steel positioning is, I break it into internal objects or external objects. Internal objects being the objects that are manufactured internally by the fabricator or the workshop, all right, the steel work generally, all right. Objects that are delivered to the workshop and to be taken to site, which would be your special items like your turnbuckles and bits and pieces, as well as your bolts, generally come to site and they sit on a pallet until they're ready to go to site. In some instances, the handrail and the grating are fabricated in the workshop in panels and bits and pieces, and then are taken as a panel to site, or as a grating panel to site. The actual handrails and grating are a bit of a grey zone, but the external objects are normally the objects that are procured outside or external of the workshop or fabricator, and get sent straight to site. So your classic example here are your purlins, your girts, and your bridging. They are sent to site. The workshop never sees them, which means I allow for the numbering to be sort of a little bit different, just to keep a nice continuity through my project. In some instances, again, this is the grey zone, your handrail and your grating, but generally I will treat them as an internal object regardless. Okay, so let's get down to the pointy end. Again, this is my system. I like using it because it has very little human contact. Okay, so the internal objects, remember the stuff that my workshop is responsible for, the system that I use is a numerical only. The single parts start at 1000 and the groups start at 100. So the first object being 1000 or the first group being 100. Now the reason that I use this system, there's many reasons, but not the least of which, I never run out of single part numbers. Okay, and I need 900 groups before I have a numbering issue. Okay, so that is a compelling reason to begin with. The other thing that I really like about it is I never have a step up in numbers. So it's always just a 4-digit number for my single parts or a 3-digit number for my groups. Right? I definitely don't start at 1 so that it goes, 1 through to 10 through to 100, going single digit, 2 digits, 3 digits, because if you export to different programs, it messes up the numbering sometimes. Okay, where if I just use a 3-digit number as an example, no matter what I export to, it never messes my numbering system up. So I hope that sort of makes sense. There's a few compelling reasons I use this. All right. As far as the external objects go, I do break this down into alphanumerical. Alright, so my purlins will start at P for purlin 100, G for girt 100, and bridging B100. Now, what that means is when this all goes to site, the rigger who has never seen this job before picks up all the steel work that is just a 3-digit group numbering system, as well as he's got purlins, girts and bridging, which is P100, again 3-digit numbering system with a prefix on it, and it's got this nice continuity. Alright, I don't mix things up and make it confusing for him. I keep it all nice and as simple as I possibly can for him. As far as the grading and the handrail, it's the same story. So HR 1000 for the handrail, GR 1000 for the grading, and the groups break into the hundreds again. So I hope that makes sense. It works all pretty well. And again, the staging and phasing of big jobs works in with this really nicely as well. So let's have a quick look here at our staging and phasing. Again, I just want to reiterate, I don't normally use this. It's only for really big jobs, and I would normally break the jobs into different models to make it nice and easy for me to sort of keep a track of what phase is what phase. I would reference the models into each other so that I could keep a track. I wouldn't sort of try and do this method all in one model, just to be clear. So our internal, which would normally start at 1000, we're going to use our family classes to put a prefix on it, and you could have the A dash or just an A, it's up to you. For the both for the single part and the groups. Alright, external objects get exactly the same prefix, and here in this screen grab is what it looks like, the end result. Okay, so you can see, so stage or phase A or would look like that, and then you would have B and C and D, etc., etc. So again, there's a real structure to this. Okay, alright, so let's kick off in the live demo. So the first thing we want to do is we want to break up internal from external. So we'll do that with our display classes. And the easiest way I find is I'm just going to select everything by holding, picking the first one, holding down Shift, pick the bottom one, and we're going to turn everything off. And this will just make it a little bit quicker for me to pick the bits that I want to turn back on. So technically, hold down bolts, fittings and members are the internal. That's the easiest way for me to remember it. So I'll turn those guys on, and this is the stuff that my workshop is going to make that is numeric only. So what we've got on the screen. So from there, let's come across here to steel positioning. We want the steel positioning tab. Let's run through this. We'll have a quick look at this. First thing I'm going to get you to do is load the template, which is the Australian numerical. And you can see it'll load all of our settings up. So we want it numerical, and we definitely want it to detail or position all parts. That way anything that actually might have already had a position number because we copied it in or something like that will be automatically overwritten. That bit's very important. Alright, at this stage here we want it to position everything. You can see the single parts here start at 999, which means 1000 is going to be my first. The groups will position from 99, giving me my first one of 100. We don't do the groups, subgroups or the assemblies. They're not required here. I'm just going to have a quick look at the options here. Depending on what version you're running, really probably wouldn't hurt for you to just ensure that the template and everything's loaded. So all of these options here, these are my settings. I'm just run through a couple of these tabs just to make sure that yours is the same. There shouldn't be anything for you to change within here, but just check, make sure this is max plus 1, means that we're going to keep giving one at a time in the count. And take over main part, we'll tick that guy on as well. Our prefixes should be empty because we're not going to do that here. we're actually going to do it with part families a little bit later on. But just a little user tip is, if you're not quite sure about the settings or whatever, depending on your version, please go to the template and load, just make sure the Australian template is loaded. It's just a really good habit to get into the first time you install the software. Just ensure that's loaded up. Now for our actual positioning buttons, we've got the one on the left here that is single parts only. The one in the middle is groups only. And the one on the far right is groups and single parts. Please do not use this one. Alright, my methodology is to do the single, then the groups only. So we'll select that, and your options are, we can either choose all here or window the job. I normally just window everything that I want numbered. You'll notice that I did the bolts and everything. Okay, just have a quick check here. Is it a 4-digit number? I get a lot of people, they scroll through here, they're checking things out. It doesn't matter. All I care about is this a 4-digit number. If it is, then it's done what I needed it to do. Next I go to groups. Again, choose all or window, or window, and this time we wanted a 3-digit number. So we're just going to check, is it a 3-digit number? Yes, it is. Now I do get a lot of people ask me, why do we have this new number sitting over here next to 100 as an example? So we've got 100 here, and then we've got a new number next to it. The reason is that on the first comparison we have a 310 UB40, it's the same length, but on a second pass it sees that the modifications and objects welded to it are different. So it initially gets number 100 based on object type and object length, and then on the second pass is where it checks modifications and so forth. Okay, now with that completed, you can see that the last numbers used for the single part are here, and the last one used for the group is here, which means if we were to continue numbering, it would go from these numbers. Okay, which is sort of pretty easy to follow. Alright, so let's close that down, and we'll have a look at what this has done to our objects. So if I come to one of these guys here at the top, you can see that in the single part data, he has part number 1014. He is one of 4. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what it's done is it's gone around and it's found all the similar ones and added them all together and counted them all up. On the groups, we have a group number here of 114. Okay, and if I go to the values here, you can see he's 1 of 4 and has this many objects here welded to it, including bolts and bits and pieces. So it does its count and compare pretty well. So we have a left and right rafter here. You can see the single part number here, it's 1 of 2, because the actual component, the UB, is the same twice, but the group is 1 of 1 because they're left and right. So it understands that they're left and right. So it does a pretty good job of this sort of thing. So that's about it for all my internal stuff. So the next thing we're going to do is we'll have a look at our external stuff. So we're going to have to isolate that. We'll turn all this stuff off. And remember, it's alphanumeric the way that I do that. So we'll come up to our display classes again, and we'll turn these top couple off. So just holding down Shift to select multiple, turn those guys off, and we'll start with purlins. We do purlins separately from Gertz because one's a P number and one's a G number. We'll go to positioning, and this time I don't think I've got a template here for you down in favorites, so I think there's just a numeric one. Yeah, that's fine. It's really easy to adjust. Up the top, instead of numerical, I want to make it alphanumerical. So P100 for the first one. Again, I still do want to do all parts because even if something had a number, it would overwrite it. But the last single one used, I want this guy to be, I want it to be P99, which will give me the first number will be P100. And remember, there's no groups in this for these because they're external. So the group number can just remain whatever. It could be 0. It could be, we're not going to use it anyway. I'll just show you the settings for alphanumerical. It's really important this is set to 5. If you've got an earlier version, it may not be set to 5, because what happens if it's set to 2 or something like that, it will go P99 and then we'll go Q99, oh, Q1. So only single parts. Remember, we don't use groups and we don't use the one on the far right. Only single parts. Window the job again, and we just want to make sure the first number is P100, which has done exactly what I needed it to do. If I push this aside, we can turn purlins off and Gertz on. I don't think we've got bridging. Gertz on. Okay, set it from P to a G number, 99. Single parts again, and off you go again. So this process can be really quick when you get the hang of it. Okay, we get through this really fast. So the final thing that we've got left to do is our grading. I'll just show you the grading really quickly. We've got handrails too, but I'll just do the grading. So it's really important that what we're going to do is we're going to make it alphanumerical again, but it will be GR999, giving me 1,000 number, and the group will be GR99. And again, we're going to do single parts, then we're going to do groups. When do our job. Is the number correct? Yes, it is. Always do your quick check. Doing my groups. Is the number correct? Yes, it is. So you can see the positioning, you can get through it really fast once you get the hang of it. So let's have a look at these part families that we've been avoiding for a couple of sessions now. Now, part families, I can populate the description and so forth, and I can assign that description as a prefix to an object. The key thing, my advice is always leave this number 1 blank. It's really important, and let me show you why. If I come to the shapes, like we're going to insert a shape, I can, by accident, and a lot of people do it, I can add the part family here. And let me just show you what this does. So let's go a random object with a random assigned part family. And if I go to the properties of this object, you can see that the value of it now gets a PT in brackets. Now, it can be a little bit difficult to remove if you've got a whole heap of them accidentally put in. So please be careful when you're putting objects in. Please leave the first part family blank. Always leave this blank, and use the ones underneath it. So I'm just going to go down the bottom here as an example, and we're going to break this job into phases. So phase A with the prefix A. Oh, and while I think of it, remember when we were having a look at the slides, you could make it an A, or you could have an A dash or an A space, or whatever it is that works for you in your little system. New one, and we'll call this phase B as an example. And what this is going to do is it's going to put the prefix on the front of it. Now, as I said at the beginning in our slides, I wouldn't normally use part families for this size job, but if you have a look at this move, copy, align tool, this one's an excellent little tool. Go to the copy tab and I can copy groups, and this will allow me to copy this group out, and I'm going to apply the part family to that so you can have a look at it. But this is a great little tool if you didn't know it exists, a great way for grabbing a whole group in one hit. Alright, so we'll come back to our part families. Alright, and we'll apply a phase A. I can apply a single part, a group, or a both single and group, which is the normal thing to do. Okay, and let's go and have a look at that now. So if you remember, it was 1003 and it gets the A in brackets on the front, and the brackets don't show up when it prints out. It ignores those. So that will come out as A103, or if you put a little dash beside the A, it'll come out A-103. Okay, so that's our part families, and that's how they work, and I use it to phase or stage jobs. Now while we're in here, I'd like to show you adding a group note, or adding the paint finish to our structure. So again, we're going to pull this back down to an internal level, so just our steelwork, because really the steelwork is what we want to have a paint finish on. So really, fittings and members really is what we want to isolate, and we want to apply a paint finish to the groups. So the way that we can do that is we'll go to the groups, and you can either go to number 6 here, edit the group, or we can bring up the group dialog. This is the button here on the first tab, edit group data. Okay, and I can just window the job, or you can pick them individually. It's up to you as the user. And our data under note 1 of our group data, we can put a paint finish in here. So my paint spec. There we go. If you've got multiple paint finishes, do the biggest set first, and then you can come back and do sort of the random ones later if it's easier for you. You'll find a way around this. So let's make these selected columns here. Instead of my paint spec, let's make these guys HD galvanized. Alright, and that way we've got a partial paint finish on, or my paint finish or my paint spec on all the standard steelwork under the group data here, my paint spec, right, and our columns will be galvanized. Simple as that, and that's going to come out in our drawings now. We're now at the stage where we're ready to detail this. So before I do that, I not only want to save our settings are the view as well as the thumbnail, but I also want to save as a copy. Alright, now this is just good practice. It means that the version that I've got on the screen here right at the moment has been positioned. It is as complete as I'm going to get it. And in any of the versions of ProSteel, if it was ever going to fall over, it would fall over when we were detailing or whatever. And there is the remotest possibility that it may corrupt a model or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure we have an insurance policy that we have a backup model that is to the finished, completed, positioned point, and we have a backup at that stage. And of course, we don't want to keep working on our backed up version. We need to reopen the original that we were working on. Okay, so the backup is exactly that. So from this point here, now I'm ready to continue detailing. And just to wrap up, I'd like to introduce this button here, which is a display all button. It's a really handy button when you want to quickly turn everything on that had been hidden in your classes.